back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by a very good friend of the channel and a very good friend of mine personally, the Hot Horror Queen. How you doing today, love?
Hey, it's so nice to see you again. Feels like it's been forever.
It really does. So for those of you that don't know, we were lucky enough, Ashley and I, to have her as a guest on Didn't See That Coming. We did our episode on Sleepaway Camp. If you have not yet seen that, the link is right down here in the description, as well as all of Hot Horror Queen's social media links. So make sure you're clicking these and giving her a follow. So what's been going on in your world since the last time we talked?
Well, this week is the perfect time for this interview because it is, spoiler, Shark Week.
It definitely is Shark Week.
That. I even brought some little nerdy items to show off if we have time. So I have to stick with the theme, but this is my favorite week out of the year. So everything's going pretty well. Otherwise, Twitter's been awesome. Doing lots of giveaways and having fun. So I'm glad to be joining you and talking about my favorite thing ever.
Yes, this is so awesome. And like she said, guys, she does giveaways on Twitter, as well as she's just an all-around excellent follow. She's very knowledgeable in her horror kingdom up here, and it's always fun to have conversations with her. So make sure you're giving her a follow. Links are right down here in the description. I mean, you guys probably already guessed it, but we got to go back to the past now, Horror Queen, and talk about the movie that got you started in the horror genre. And your first horror movie was
Jaws, baby.
Take a trip with me on the Orca. Yay! Shot for shot. Let's go.
Yeah, little shark. I have so many things I brought with us. Yay, we match.
That is so awesome. So, obviously you're a big fan of Jaws. Do you remember how old you were the first time you watched it?
I had to actually ruminate on this and think about it. So, since we're going back to first horror movies, I was like, well, I've seen a lot of horror movies, but I saw them in pieces. So, to be fair, this was the first one my parents allowed me to watch with a friend. Sure. And I was at a sleepover, and her parents were way cooler than mine. And I think I was about 7. So I had already been super interested in sharks and read every single piece of literature, watched every show I could on them growing up. And this was like the sweet spot for me. So it was a cool friend's parents that were like, you want to watch Jaws? And I was like, I have to get permission. But I did. And I get to watch it. So about 7.
And it's such a great movie. And it's one of the things that I have people try to tell me this isn't a horror movie. And it drives me insane because this is totally top-notch horror. And while we're on the subject of this being a top-notch horror film, what would you say the scene was that affected you the most from Jaws?
Actually, I think an unsung hero in the general kills or scenes period, but it is a kill. The scene that stuck with me the most when I was a kid was the estuary scene. So when the man who's unnamed in the credits goes to approach the kids and see if they need any help, and just that foreboding, huge silhouette, you can barely see the shark, just enough, just grabbing him and yanking him. So awesome. That stuck with me forever.
Yeah, and it's funny because something we've talked about a lot, and everybody that watches this knows, there was so many technical difficulties on this film, and it made it so Bruce the Shark isn't you don't see the shark very much in the film. And I think that actually plays so much better with the suspense and the thrills of the movie. You got to move your hair so everybody can read the shirt real quick.
Oh yeah, it's Jawsome, baby. And I was going to ask you ahead of time, but to keep the theme of blood, I got red wine. So
yes,
a little red wine on set on top of theater blood. So cheers.
That is fucking awesome, man. I love that shirt. That's one of the coolest shirts I've ever seen. That's so incredible. So when you think about Jaws, what do you think the first thing that pops into your head is?
Well, I think that one thing, I've actually met a few people in my life that have not seen Jaws, and that blows me away, but everybody knows the theme song, man.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the score. It's absolutely incredible. And I really, not only did that set the tone for the movie in general, but everybody knows it, like I said, and at first, Spielberg didn't want it. He's like, what is this? And he was like, all right, let me listen to it, to a few scenes. And he was like, okay, I think this could work. But he still wasn't like sold on it. But I just can't picture the film at all without the score. It's absolutely iconic. And everybody knows it. So even if you haven't seen it, you think you might have seen it.
Right. It's like
something about
Psycho, Jaws, and Halloween. those
Yes.
movies, everybody knows the score, even if they've never seen a second of the film, which shows how important a score can be to a film. And I'm with you. Every time I think of Jaws, it's the dun. Again, it's such a great suspenseful build to a fantastic movie. So this is a movie that, I love this movie. And this was a very quotable movie for me growing up, whether it was the
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
or
Smile, you son of a...
those were so quotable to me as a child, and I said those lines all the time. But what would you say your favorite scene from Jaws is?
Oh gosh. Actually, I think my favorite scene is when, well, towards the beginning, I think about, sounds nerdy, 20 or so minutes in, when Ellen approaches Chief Brody and the kids are outside playing in the boat, and he's like, he doesn't want them in the boat, and he's yelling at Mike to get back in the house, get out of the boat. And she's like, come on, it's his birthday tomorrow, let him have some fun. And he's flipping through this book that has sharks, shark attacks, just like everything you need to know. Fun story about that. I actually had that book and I tried to find it and I can't find it, but I had that same book, and it's just, he's flipping through it and looking at all this gnarly stuff, and he kind of gives in, and then he gets up, sees what they're doing, and then she starts to tab through the book and she sees all of it and she's like, get out of the boat, didn't you hear your father, get out of the boat. It's so iconic. And also, like, she's like, you want to get messed up and fool around, like, just everything is just so organic and believable, and they just have this perfect amalgamation of just playing off of each other and how well they fit together as a unit. They're so well cast.
That's what I said, the whole cast is like that. Like, it's so phenomenal. When you got them out on the boat telling the story, like, you're so intrigued this whole time when he's telling the story. And the guy was like blackout drunk, the actor, when he was doing it, which makes it that much better.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. So we obviously, when we go into a horror movie, something that we as horror fans look for is the kills and the quality of the kills in the film. So when you look at Jaws, what would you say your favorite kill from the movie is?
Well, actually, I'm going to go back to that scene that I say is, to me, definitely one of my favorite scenes, which was the man in the estuary warning the boys, or he wasn't warning them, he was checking on them, and the boat gets bumped, he gets pulled down. Not only do you get that awesome aerial shot of the shark actually grabbing him and yanking him under, and a little bit of his reaction, but you also see one of the severed legs just sink to the bottom, and it's such a good practical effect. It looks awesome, and the water's all brackish, and it's totally well done. Martha's Vineyard was, I guess, partially a great setting, even though that's part of the reason for the sharks not working. But yeah, that one's pretty gnarly, and I feel like that's kind of another unsung hero, because everybody usually goes to Quint, which isn't a bad choice, or Alex Kintner. But speaking of, I brought this for you. One of my friends got me.
Oh, that is
Alex
so
Kintner
awesome.
Action figure. Is this too messed up?
That's so funny. That's fantastic. And
I saw it.
you gotta,
but it's not a bad choice. Like, every kill is great. And I mean, we don't get to see the dog bite it either, which might be for the better. Pippet didn't get it, but.
Well, I mean, and you talk about the Alex Kintner kill. I think that one, I believe it was you that showed me the picture of the unused photograph of Bruce the shark getting ready to bite into him. But I mean, that's one of those kills that you're like, oh my God, they really did it. They pulled the trigger and killed a kid. Right. And it's something that you really don't get a lot of in horror. Nowadays you're getting a little more of it, but back then it was almost taboo. Like, you had it in like Pet Sematary, you had it in Jaws, but it wasn't, all that common to kill kids in a horror movie.
Everything, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that, you go for it, and Spielberg went for it with that. Absolutely. So we talked about what your first horror movie was, Hot Horror Queen, and we talked about how much that movie means to you, which obviously we all know Jaws means the world to you. Me being a friend of yours, I know what this movie means to you. But I got to go scream on you here for a second. What's your favorite scary movie? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Well, it's going to sound... I've always said I have a tie, but if I had to shove one off a cliff and keep one, it's always going to be Jaws, because since I was a very small child, I was always obsessed with sharks. One of my paths in life was to be an osteologist, which is specifically a shark biologist. So I could read endless amounts of literature, still not good enough. Every year, Shark Week was everything to me. So right now I'm like in the zone. But It truly just, it embodies everything. There's something for everybody. It's an action movie. It has drama, it has horror, it has comedy, it has literally everything. It has heart. It's absolutely expertly shot by a relatively new director at the time, being Steven Spielberg, which now is obviously kind of laughable because we're like,
Right.
oh, remember when he was new? I mean, really, he only had Duel under his belt. So I think that that's absolutely phenomenal that this made such an impact and was not topped for a long time in the box office. Speaks for itself.
Right. And another thing people oft forget that aren't huge horror fans, Jaws has one of the best jump scares ever in the history of film.
Yeah, there's a few.
When you go down in that water and he grabs that tooth and then, you know, the face comes out, like it's such an effective jump scare at that part. Like I'm such a huge fan of that jump scare. Now I know the answer to this, but I gotta ask because we're doing a franchise. I have to ask the question. Jaws, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, Jaws the Revenge. That is what I consider the franchise of Jaws. Which movie in the Jaws franchise is your favorite?
Oh, Jaws, hands down. I really do love Jaws 2, but and I think it's a really nice, obviously, of most of the cast as well, which helps. But it's a good continuation. It still has a lot of the same feeling. You don't get Spielberg at the helm, but I mean, Jaws is just everything. I know it's super, super popular, and a lot of people, oh, it's mainstream, or oh, everybody likes it, but everybody, like every now and then people get it right as a whole, you know, like they love it because it's amazing. It transcends time. It has a universal message that hits home with everybody over something, you know, and it's so enjoyable. I can put it on at any point in time. You don't have to overthink it. It just feels, it flows. It's organic. It's a good time. So.
And like you said, the reason everybody likes it is because it's fucking perfect. That's why everybody likes it. And Jaws is as close to a perfect movie. For me, it's like Jaws, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Back to the Future, I think, are the three closest to perfect movies I've ever seen in my entire life. I absolutely adore all those films.
Bad choices.
And it's funny because I agree with you. I don't think Jaws 2 is all that bad. Jaws 3D is god awful, and Jaws the Revenge is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. But if it was up to me, I think Jaws is one of those franchises that really should have been a standalone film. If you would have just had Jaws and then never built off that again, that would have been perfect. You didn't need to franchise this. Yeah, but that's exactly it. And I think it's funny that they went, because they're remaking The Exorcist now, and they went to Spielberg to talk to him about remaking Jaws, and he hit him with like the hardest no in the world. He was like, nope, you're not doing it.
A little shout out on that note. Friend Harrison Smith, awesome director, has a podcast called Cinema, and he did an episode that inspired actually the reason why he did podcasts and started his whole channel was because of Jaws the Revenge. It's definitely worth a listen. So it's very insightful and very, very funny and very true. I do love Michael Caine, but come on, Michael Caine.
Right.
He needed to pay for his house, he said. He needed money to pay for that, pay it off. So he did the movie, but you know. It's kind of fun to me. It does have nostalgic value, but you can't say it's a good movie. It's not a well-made movie.
And Harrison Smith, friend of the podcast, I've had him on here as well. He's a great guy, great director. I love him to death. So I'm very grateful for that shout out. Now, before I let you go, again, I know the answer to this, Hot Horror Queen, but I always got to ask the question. We always end with a skull count. So what we're doing now is we're ranking Jaws on 0 to 5 skulls, 0 being the worst and 5 being the best. We're not ranking it on production, quality, score, acting, lighting, cinematography. We're strictly ranking it on what this movie means to you and how much it affected you. So 0 to 5 skulls, how much would you give Jaws?
Hold on. 5. It's amazing. You can't, I mean, I don't want to be an annoying person and say, oh, it's 16, but yeah, it's 16. Yeah, no, 5.
Yeah, it's totally a 16.
It's perfect.
I get it. And it's funny because I don't ever want to rank on, critic, quality of film. Because I don't think there's ever going to be a 5 skull perfect film, in my opinion, just my opinion. But that's why I want to do what it means to us, because there's so many movies to me that are, perfect movies that aren't perfect movies, but just because of what they mean to me, that makes them a perfect movie. Shaun of the Dead being one. Like, I think that's a fucking billion skull movie, but it's not perfect. But to me, it completely is. Just like with you and Jaws, to you, that's the perfect movie. And when I think of you, I think of Jaws. It's funny because
My heart.
we I mean, like we're friends. We talk, and me and my wife were lucky enough to do the Didn't See That Coming on Sleepaway Camp, and
Yeah.
you would think that when we talked, I'd think of Sleepaway Camp, but I don't. Like, I totally think of Jaws and Sharks because of all the conversations we've had about how much this movie means to you. So it's really incredible to have you on, guys. I want to remind you one more time. Make sure you're clicking the links down here in the description and throwing her a follow. Great friend of mine, great friend of the podcast, and just an all-around wonderful person. So don't go anywhere, Horror Queen. I got a couple more questions for you. As everybody else, please keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.